guys, welcome back to my channel. I have another update for you on the 50 book reading challenge. I have a little bit more to talk about than I did on the last video, so I'm going to try to go through things a little bit more quickly than I was before. So let's get right into it. The first one that I want to talk to you about is a book that your mom loves. For this one, I read The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. Yes. So Remains of the Day is a very short novel. It is about an old butler who has served a few masters throughout his career, but most of his career was serving this old English gentleman who was a prominent figure at the time. It bridges sort of the post-World War I leading up to World War II, but then the main thread of the novel is taking place in the 1950s, so it's like the current day is 1950s, but he keeps flashing back to previous years, usually in the 1930s. And his current employer is an American gentleman because his previous employer has died, and the American gentleman has bought the house and moved in, and he has very reduced staff, and it's very sort of quiet and sad novel about this person who's spent his whole life in the service industry, and his whole world is sort of shrinking and becoming more insular and not mattering as much anymore. And I ended up really relating to it in a certain way because I did spend many years in the service industry. Obviously, I wasn't working as a butler in a great house in England, but there is certain things that I could relate to, like the way that people expect you when you're in the service industry to sort of simultaneously be more and less than human, because you're supposed to be above human mistakes but not worthy of regular human emotion. So it was an interesting pull between the two. So it had this sort of feeling of melancholy throughout the whole thing, and I sort of expected, I think, more to happen than actually did, but it's a very quiet, very subdued novel. So it is very short, it doesn't really take long to read. It's basically him going on a like 3-day car ride basically and sort of reminiscing about his past as he's doing it. So that was for the category A Book Your Mom Loves. So the next book that I wanted to talk about is called When by Ive Toria. It has a sort of magical realism aspect to it, but this one is for the category of a mystery or a thriller. So in this one, the main girl named Maddie has the ability to see the date that someone is going to die, and it basically just sort of floats above their forehead, and she can see it in people that she meets in real life, in photographs, in videos. If someone's already died, she sees the day that they did die. And basically she discovered this when she was very little, when she wrote down, she was learning her numbers, and she basically wrote down the dates that everyone was going to die on, like a family portrait, and then her father died when she was young, and that's how they figured out that that's what she was seeing. And so basically her mother went into a depressive spiral, and she has basically turned to using her gift as a way to earn money for her family, where she will read people's numbers for them, or if they want to know about their family members, loved ones, stuff like that, she'll read the numbers for them. And of course this turns problematic when a client comes to get a reading and she wants to know about her son who has cancer, and she wants to know how long he has, if you know it's worth it to put him through this experimental treatment that might be very painful. And basically she realizes that the son that has cancer will be fine, but she has a picture of all three, and she realizes that one of the other children is set to die a week from then. When she tells the client this, the client becomes very upset and insists that she's lying, and insists that she's a fraud, and leaves very abruptly and very upset. But then, of course, the child gets kidnapped and murdered. And so because she predicted this, she becomes a prominent feature in the FBI investigation, and it ends up looking like there might be a serial killer that's stalking people in the neighborhood, and so it sort of goes from there. I think that it works as a thriller. I think that it tried to go a little bit further and become more of like a musings on the nature of death and on the nature of mortality. And on that level, I don't know that it actually got there, but it did work as a, mystery, thriller, murder mystery type of story. That part of it worked very well. I think the author is actually a mystery writer, Victoria Laurie. I think she's written mystery novels for adults before. I think this is her first young adult novel. And in fact, her name actually looked familiar when I was in the bookstore. I was like, oh, I think that I recognize that. So that was partly why I even picked it up. So she definitely has, her mystery writing chops down, basically, but I don't know how sold I was on the like musings on mortality and human nature, etc. that it had, and the ending felt maybe a little bit trite, because one of the things that she's concerned with is whether or not her predictions can, or whether or not her knowledge of people's death dates can change the nature of their death dates. You know, whether letting someone know that they're set to die on a certain day can help them prevent it. And she's never seen one change at the beginning, and she's become very cynical, and I don't know, by the ending it felt just a little bit too neat. So I definitely thought that it was decent. I read it very quickly in, you know, like a day, so it definitely worked as a thriller. It had that sort of page-turning aspect to it. So it was When by Victoria Laurie. It's definitely, you know, it's worth checking out. Next on my list is To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. This one is for a book with a love triangle, which is not usually my favorite trope in the world, but this book had the advantage of being just straight up a fake dating fic. And I love those. They're one of my favorite things. I just love fake dating. It's really great. So basically this one is very sweet. The main character, Laura Jean, is she's about the same age as many other protagonists. She's about 16, but she feels very young. She feels sort of sheltered and a little bit immature, but in a way that I didn't particularly find obnoxious. I actually found it fairly relatable, because I felt like that's closer to how I actually was when I was 16. A lot of the times I read these young adult novels and the 16-year-olds seem much more sophisticated than I think most 16-year-olds really are. And so I felt that it was very sweet and very earnest and very heartfelt, and she's very innocent, and you know, she like spends an exciting Friday night organizing her dressers and stuff, and I'm just like, I feel that. That's kind of how I spent most of my high school career. So Laura Jean is the middle of three sisters, and her older sister Margot is going off to college in the very beginning of the book. And because Margot is going off to college, she has broken off her relationship with their next door neighbor, Josh. So she breaks up with her boyfriend Josh, and Laura Jean has had a long-standing crush on Josh, and so she's sort of put it away when they started dating, but once they break up, it kind of all comes back and she remembers how she felt about him. And meanwhile, she's written these letters to basically every boy that she had a major crush on, including Josh, and her letters end up getting mailed out. She'd kept them in her room in a hat box, but they somehow mysteriously end up getting mailed out, and I thought that it was pretty obvious how that happened, but anyway, not the point. So Josh gets one, which causes lots of problems because he's like a big family friend who's been around for years. He had never thought of her that way. And another one of her old crushes, Peter, gets the letter, and basically Peter decides that what he's gonna do, because his girlfriend recently broke up with him, is that Peter and Laura Jean should pretend to date so that Josh will leave her alone, because she doesn't want to date him because Margot dated him, and you know, she has suspicions that Margot still has feelings for him and she doesn't want to do that, and he wants to get back at his ex. And you know, if you've read any fake dating fic ever, you know exactly how this goes. So I found it pretty delightful, a little bit predictable, but I love fake dating fics partly because I know exactly how they're gonna happen, like that's part of the charm, so I didn't mind that. Yeah, I just thought that Laura Jean was really adorable. I love the cover also, I think it's very sweet. So the book is called To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han, and this was for a book with a love triangle. So I have one more book that I want to talk about with you today, which is a book with a title that's one word. I don't remember exactly how it's phrased, but that was the idea. I have a long-standing history with the book series that I'm about to show you, which is that I started reading it many, many years ago, and I went to a book signing when I was only in like book 5, and the book signing was for book 11. And I realized at that point that I was gonna have to read at least through book 12, because what that author did at the signing, which apparently was like a tradition, is he revealed the first sentence of the following book, the one that was not out yet, so book 12. And when I heard the first sentence of book 12, I knew that I was eventually gonna have to read it. However, as I continued to read through the whole series, I realized that I was not necessarily going to like book 12, because I realized that I did not particularly like this series. So what I read as a book that has one word as the title was Changes by Jim Butcher, book 12 of the Dresden Files. So How do I even describe the Dresden Files? They're about a wizard who is a PI in Chicago, and he solves supernatural crimes, essentially, while getting mixed up in the police and the mafia and lots of other stuff. And the problem with them really is that they're like really misogynistic, they're pretty homophobic. Harry Dresden himself is an incredibly obnoxious main character where he's just like the center of the fucking universe and everything, literally everything revolves around him, which is sort of carried through in the narrative as well as in his own head. They're kind of the worst. But on the other hand, the one thing that Jim Butcher does really well is like keep the plot moving relentlessly. So by the time you get like a few chapters in, like 12 million things have happened and you need to see what ridiculous situation Harry is somehow gonna manage to get through next. And I listened to it on audiobook. Like, I have a physical copy, but I listened to the audiobook, which is read by James Marsters, who, if you know anything about Joss Whedon, was Spike on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. And he does a really, really good reading of it. And so it's just kind of fun, even though I kind of hate the whole series, it's kind of fun to listen to James Marsters narrate them. And the plot lines are so ridiculous that eventually I end up just kind of getting swept along with them, even though I kind of can't stand them. I'm also just gonna say, like, one more plug for the audiobooks is that it was actually kind of cathartic to listen to it that way, because so I usually listen to audiobooks in my car, which means that I'm alone, which means that if something is annoying me, I can start shouting at the steering wheel. Like the fact that he will just go off on these long explanations of things that aren't that complicated and don't really need to be explained, or like the fact that he objectifies every frickin' woman that he meets, and you know, the way that somehow like every woman wants to have sex with him. So yeah, the books are kind of trashy. Kind of enjoyable, but pretty bad. And so I think that that is it that I have to talk about for this video. I have been reading some more stuff, so I will have another video hopefully up soon. I know I said that last time and then it was like 3 weeks, but I'm working on it. I'm working on doing more than like one video every 3 months. So I think that this 50 book challenge is probably going to be a good way to do that, is just to sort of get videos out more often. I hope that you guys are enjoying these videos with the 50 book challenge. I'm enjoying reading them and I'm enjoying finding books to match the categories, so I hope that you guys like it as much as I am. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!